Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. This is Chauncey Goss. I'm chairman of the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District. It's October 13th, 2022, and I'm going to call the governing board monthly meeting to order. We're going to be doing a Zoom meeting today, and I'd like to perform a roll call first. I'd like to check with Vice Chair Wagner. You here?
I'm here. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. Mr. Bergeron, it's good to hear your voice. Mr. Bergeron, you here?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Butler.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Mr. Martinez.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Ms. Meads.
I'm here, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Roman.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Mr. Steinley.
Good morning, I'm here.
Great. Mr. Lipich.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. As is our practice, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. If the board members would join me in unmuting themselves while we say the pledge, and then you can re-mute yourself, if that's a word, afterwards, that would be great. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic
which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We appreciate everyone for joining us for this public meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, please go to our website, sfwnd.gov, and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page, and staff will help you out. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Board members, I'm going to ask you also to use the raise your hand feature during the meeting, except when making a motion or seconding a motion. In those instances, please unmute yourself, state your last name, and then make the motion or the second. We only have 2 items for that. During the 2 presentations, you can also raise your hand at any time if you do have a question for staff. For the actual voting, we'll be doing a roll call vote. Please unmute yourself to cast your vote when I call your name. At this point, we'll move to agenda revisions. Rosie, are there any revisions to the agenda?
No, there were not.
Thanks. How about abstentions by board members? Is there anything we need to abstain from? I'll start with Vice Chair Wagner.
no.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
No.
Thanks. Mr. Butler?
No, sir.
Thanks. Mr. Martinez? Mr. Martinez, I'm getting static. You there? I'll come back to you. Ms. Meads?
No, sir.
Colonel Roman?
I have none.
Mr. Steinley?
None.
Mr. Thurlovich?
None.
Thanks. Mr. Martinez, you there?
Yes, none.
And you have none. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I have none. We'll move on now to item number 5. We have 3 minutes from September to approve. We have 2 that were on September 8th and 1 that was on September 20th. Are there any board member changes to the minutes for the 3 board meetings that were held in September? If not, could I have someone make a motion in a second on those?
Mr. Chair, this is Charlotte. I'll move to approve all 3 sets of minutes.
Thank you.
Butler, second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call that question. Now, Vice Chair Wagner,
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Thanks. Ms. Meads,
Yes.
Colonel Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Steinle,
Yes.
Mr. Olepich,
Yes.
and I'm going to vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thanks. As many of you know, our EOC, or Emergency Operations Center, is still at level 1. Hurricane Ian made landfall just 15 days ago, but as you know, our staff began work well before that and has really been working tirelessly since then. And the reason for the abbreviated meeting today is that we don't want to distract the staff with governing board matters when they should be working hard on recovery. You know, our meetings really seem seamless to us on the governing board, but a lot of staff time goes into the preparation. We want to make sure that we thank our incredible staff for their efforts during Ian. In my mind, you're absolutely all heroes to us. I'd like to encourage you, though, while it's fresh in your mind, as you're working on this recovery efforts, to write down any lessons learned. What worked? What didn't? What could we do better next time? I know it's easy to say that now, but if you don't keep it fresh and you don't write it down now, you might lose it. So I'd encourage everyone to do that. Now, I know I speak for the board when I say we're really proud of you. Our gratitude knows no end, and I cannot thank Drew Bartlett for his leadership enough. He's been incredible. We're going to do a technical report now. We've all been looking forward to this. It's going to be a quick update from our Deputy Executive Director and Chief District Engineer, John Mitnick. Then we're going to move on to a discussion item. We didn't want to sit for a month because, as destructive as Ian has been, we still want to keep moving forward in Everglades restoration. I'm hoping that this meeting will have a hard stop at 10 o'clock, or actually this meeting will have a hard stop at 10 o'clock if we're not there. And I know that there's many people who want to hear from Mr. Mitnick, to hear what's going on around the district, both on the governing board, in the media, and in the public. So Mr. Mitnick, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to check everybody can hear me and see the slide up on the screen.
I can hear you and I can see the slides.
All right, thank you, sir. So as the chairman indicated, I'm just going to go through a quick update on the district's activities from Hurricane Ian, as well as some of our response to it, as well as the impact of the storm itself. This by no means is a detailed presentation on the system conditions. We'll have that more next month when we get into the water conditions report. As you can imagine, right now throughout the flood control system, it's a relatively dynamic situation. A lot of water being moved around. So we can get into some of those details and have a more robust conversation of what the outlook looks like for the dry season at next month's board meeting. But with that, as I said, I'll just run through a quick overview of kind of where things stand right now. It's not moving. There we go. All right. So by now, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the track of Hurricane Ian. Came up out of the Caribbean, impacted Southwest Florida, over there on the West Coast, as it traversed across the state and eventually exited back out into the Atlantic Ocean on its way up to South Carolina. With a storm of that size and magnitude and strength, as you know, it brought a significant amount of storm surge along with it. It primarily impacted the lower West Coast. Right there around the Fort Myers area, saw some of the highest storm surge. But even well before the hurricane made landfall itself, the district was making preparations. This was actually something that we learned back in 2017 in the wake of Hurricane Irma, that we have a number of temporary pumps and other resources within our inventory. So we started before the storm even made landfall, loading up that equipment, loading up those temporary pumps. The field station crews were very proactive in getting that stuff on trucks ahead of time, such that when the all clear was given after the storm had passed, then they'd be able to move out right away to some of those impacted areas and get those pumps deployed, as opposed to having to wait a whole nother day or so to get them loaded onto the truck and then start moving out to the impacted areas. We were relatively proactive in that sense before the storm even landed, getting some of that equipment loaded up and pre-positioned, ready to go once the all clear was given. As far as the rain itself, what you're looking at is sort of the progression across the 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week. You can see on the left-hand side how on Monday, the rain started rolling in from the south and the southern portions of the district. Then Tuesday, you sort of see that characteristic rain band that you see with tropical systems, and the rains fell across the entire district, mainly in the central and east coast and west coast portions. But then on Wednesday, it was more of a game on situation where the hurricane had made landfall, started traversing up through the states. You have some of the heaviest rains in the northern portion of the water management district with those deep reds and purples. But when we take all three of those days and aggregate them together, you wind up with this sort of picture over there on the left-hand side. Again, the deep reds and purples are some of the most intense, heaviest rains. Some of that heavy rain fell outside of the water management district in one of our neighboring water management districts. But over on the right-hand side, you can see what the impact was on our water management district. So depending on where you live, you experience obviously different conditions. If you are on the lower west coast, say down in Miami-Dade County, you probably experience something akin to a 1 in 5 year storm event. But for those deep reds and purples up at the very upper end of the system where that bullseye is on the upper Kissimmee, so we're talking West Lake Toho, East Lake Toho, Lakes Hart, Mary Jane, and Myrtle, that was the epicenter of the heaviest rains. Those areas experienced what is akin to a 1 in 200 year storm event. We haven't completed all of the math yet. Staff is still crunching the numbers, but preliminary indications would lead us to believe that maybe upwards of a 200 year storm event is what was experienced in those communities up there. So just keep that in mind, and I'll circle back to that in a couple more slides, but real quick, jumping down to the southern portion of the system, starting in the upper left-hand side up here. Talked about the storm surge in the second slide. This is just how some of that storm surge impacted the lower west coast, and in particular the S79 structure along the Caloosahatchee River. You can see as the hurricane got closer to shore, started pushing all of that water up the Caloosahatchee River. It went through the structure and propagated farther upstream the river. A little bit farther to the south, down around the Naples area, Big Cypress Basin, one of the coastal structures, Coco 1, also experienced a significant storm surge of about 7 feet here as the hurricane got closer and closer to landfall, and those winds started whipping up the Gulf waters and pushing them against the shoreline. Now, that's not to say folks over on the East Coast didn't experience any storm surge. There was some minimal storm surge down in Miami-Dade County. So our southernmost structure, the S197, also was impacted during the storm from a storm surge. You can see if you look across the graphs where this line is 0, so any of those green traces that drop below there, right in here and right here, that would be negative flow going back up the canal from the surge. Well, there were minor impacts of storm surge along the lower East Coast. There were some in that region as well. Jumping over to the lower right-hand corner of the slide, C4 detention basin. Yeah, that emergency detention basin that we have over in Miami-Dade County along the canal. We've talked about it a couple different times. During this event, we did have operations and we did use that emergency detention basin along with the forward pumps that were installed along the C4 canal. And that proactive combination of using those facilities was able to effectively manage the waters within the C4 basin such that there weren't any real issues of concern throughout the event. As I said, folks in Miami-Dade County obviously experienced lesser amounts of rain than other portions of the system, but through the proactive operations, we were able to keep that area under relative control. Jumping up to the center slide, this is actually one of the more interesting phenomenons, at least to myself anyway, is the effect of wind on very large bodies of water. So what you're looking at here is as the hurricane approached Fort Myers and then traversed northwest of Lake Okeechobee, all of those winds were coming out of the south and out of the southeast across Lake Okeechobee. So it started pushing all the water from the southern portion of the lake back up to the north side of Lake Okeechobee, up in this area up here around Indian Prairie and Kissimmee. That's what's represented on this graphic here. So at the height of the storm, as the hurricane was passing to the northwest of the lake, you can see the levels up at the north end of Lake Okeechobee got above 19 feet, whereas down at the southern end, they got below 10 feet. And the graph sort of flatlines down here because our gauge didn't go much lower than that. But I can tell you lower lake levels were lower than 10 feet on the south end. So there was a good 9-foot slosh across Lake Okeechobee as the storm passed by. Along with all that rain that the hurricane brought to the southern portion of the system, in particular the Everglades agricultural area, we had to operate the 2 pump stations on the south end of Lake Okeechobee to move some of those floodwaters back into Lake Okeechobee for the protection of those communities on the southern end of Lake Okeechobee. Jumping over real quick to lower west coast in the Big Cypress Basin. As you can imagine, the water managers prior to the storm in Big Cypress initiated a pre-storm drawdown and lowered all of those canals to make room for the projected rainfall at the time. The BCP system responded relatively well to the storm event. There weren't any major issues identified. I'm sure, Ms. Roman, you'll get a more detailed update if you already haven't with the next BCB board meeting. But for the most part, that system performed well. We didn't have any issues where the canals came out of their canal banks and overtopped and peaked the canal bank. But then roughly by Sunday, all of the levels throughout the system had returned to their normal operating regime. So looking at Lee County, as you can imagine, with any large wind event, there's a lot of debris that gets piled up and impacting the waterways and the ability to move water off the landscape during those kinds of events. So what you're looking at here is some video of the 10 Mile Creek over in Lee County, where district staff are hard at work removing some of that debris from the waterways. This is just one of several different locations where district staff is working to remove that debris that has fallen into the canals to therefore increase some of that conveyance capacity and allow those floodwaters to drain off the landscape and get out of the communities that may be impacted. So as I said, this is just one location of a couple different areas within Lee County where we're doing that debris removal services and assisting the counties. So now jumping back up to the northern portion of the system, which is where the sort of epicenter of all the rain was. And what we're talking about is primarily this area of the upper Kissimmee Basin, right in here, East Lake Toho, Lakes Hart, Mary Jane, and Lake Myrtle. And I'll just use the graphic up here on the upper left-hand side to sort of speak how the event unfolded. So you can see prior to the event, lake levels were being drawn down. And then you have the impact of the direct rainfall from the hurricane itself as lake levels rapidly rose up through past some of their critical lake stages. And then even for several days after the hurricane had passed and already exited the state, you can see the lake levels continuing to rise up until their peaks several days later. That's the effect of the overall watershed and the entire contributing basins having that water make its way all the way down into the lake and continuing the lake to rise. So earlier I had the slide of the field stations mobilizing the various pumping equipment. This is sort of the area that we're focused on from a flooding perspective. As you walk around the different hydrographs on this slide, you can see how each of the different lake systems had rapid rises in response to not only the direct rainfall, but also the inflows from the watershed. So we knew this is the area that had the bullseye on it and that we'll need to start mobilizing those assets up to. So in addition to our usual gravity control structures that everybody's familiar with, we have those in full operations, the pump stations, the spillways, moving all those floodwaters out. We also started deploying the temporary pumps through the field stations and getting them mobilized to assist the gravity structures. Up in the upper Kissimmee chain of lakes, there's not a lot of pump stations. Most of the District 70 pump stations start at Lake Okeechobee and go down to the south and the southern portions of the system. Up in the upper Kissimmee, it's mostly gravity structures, and they're usually single gated water control structures. You don't have those large spillways that you have in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. It's usually just a single gate, relatively small capacity. So we deployed a lot of the temporary pumps to assist those gravity flows and move those floodwaters out of the lakes and get them out of the communities themselves. So it's through our partnership with the Corps of Engineers, what you see on this slide. On the right-hand side is a sort of a map and a graphic of the various locations where we were able to deploy not only district pumps, but the Corps of Engineers participated in that effort, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Deploying some temporary pumps to assist the gravity structures in moving that water through the system. If I'm doing my math correctly, adding up all those little pump symbols, there was about 26 different temporary pumps that we've deployed so far. We've got more assets coming into the area, and we're continuing to evaluate the system and move pumps around as needed to the critical areas. As we still work to combat a lot of the floodwaters that are impacting the communities in the upper chain. So recognizing that water does flow downhill, and whatever landed and all that rainfall and runoff from the upper chain of lakes has got to make it down through the Kissimmee River and its restoration. District staff started very early on monitoring the conditions in the restored reaches of the Kissimmee River. So we're talking from Lake Kissimmee down to just north of the city of Okeechobee, and watching the response of the river. So I'm sure all the board members remember the ribbon cutting not too long ago, just a couple months back with the Corps of Engineers, where we dedicated the completion of the restoration efforts along Kissimmee River in the last construction project down at the southern portion of the river. So this is really the first extreme rain event that the completed project has had to experience. Back during 2017 and with Irma, while we saw similar type volumes of flows, the response in the river was different because not all of the restoration had been completed along the river itself. So this was the first time that that entire restoration saw these kinds of flows. So it's sort of akin to buying a new car and not really taking it for a test drive, but your first outing, you want to go out and try to set a land speed record and see what happens. So it's been a learning experience as we've watched this water transition down through the system. We're keeping a very close eye on it. We're continuing to make projections and assess the monitoring data that's coming in, and working with Highlands and Okeechobee County to keep them informed so they know what to expect and those residents know what to expect as that water transitions down the system. So of course, I'm sure a lot of thoughts on everybody's mind is, what does all of this mean if it makes it down to Lake Okeechobee? There's a significant amount of water still in the upper chain of lakes that's going to be transitioning down through the system over the next couple of days, as well as the next week or so. What you have on the screen is the position analysis that you're used to seeing every single month that we talk about. District staff and the modeling group was able to make some adjustments to this month's run to try to account for some of the flows and some of the rain that the system experienced with Hurricane Ian. But I would say, I'd caution everyone to not get too wrapped around the axle and focus in on these squiggly lines at this point in time, because the system still is evolving. Not all of that water that landed in the upper Kissimmee is going to make it down to Lake Okeechobee. There's a lot of water getting moved around the system, but since this projection was done, I will tell you that we're sort of following that dashed blue line, which is the 90th probability trace coming up from October 1st. That's sort of the trajectory that we're on right now. Over the next couple of days or a week or two, you should expect to see the lake come in somewhere right in this area for the time being. And then, as I said, next month, we'd be able to have a more robust conversation of what it all means going into the rest of the dry season and what it means for Lake Okeechobee and the surrounding system. So I wouldn't focus too much on this right now. And we'll have more informed conversations at the next board meeting. So obviously, we can't do all of this without the staff here at the Water Management District. From the field stations and the field crews deploying all the temporary pumps, to all of the modelers and scientists and engineers back at headquarters and around the agency, crunching the data, running the projections, giving the predictions, providing information for management to make decisions on where to deploy these pumps and where to use the assets and where we can be most effective in helping reduce flooding in the communities. There's been a lot of 12 and 14-hour days for district staff over the last 2 weeks or so, but we're continuing to keep at it. And in addition to that, we're also trying to post daily updates with the executive director providing information to the public through all of our social media outlets, through our liaison teams and the regional representatives making presentations to the commissions. I can tell you that our team up here in Osceola County with Libby Pigman and Lisa Prather have done a phenomenal job of working with the community, not only the community and the residents, but the county administration in Osceola and Orange counties, and keeping them informed, a lot of information sharing going back and forth. So we're giving them data on how the system is evolving, when it would have been cresting, when we can expect it to start receding, and good exchange of information back and forth between those different groups. So earlier I touched on the Corps of Engineers. So that coordination has been at all levels of government, from the federal government to the state government down to the local counties. Everybody on the board is familiar with Colonel Booth out of the Jacksonville office. The Corps of Engineers has also deployed the New Orleans District Commander, Commander Colonel Jones out of New Orleans to assist in some of the flood fighting efforts in Central Florida. He was present along with Executive Director Bartlett and Governing Board Member Butler when Governor DeSantis visited the area just last week and received a briefing and meeting with local entities and some of the residents, and got a tour of some of the floodwaters, as you can see there on the left-hand side of the screen, to see firsthand of what the impact was on the communities here in Central Florida that live and work around the lake system. As we talk about that information sharing and the back and forth and exchange, during that briefing with the governor, Osceola County shared some projections that based on some of the analysis that they had done and the modeling that they had put together, that if it wasn't for the proactive response from the Water Management District and deployment of those pumps and some other of the assets into mobilizing into the area, that they projected there would have been an additional 12,000 residences that could have potentially been flooded as a result of this storm. So it's that proactive sort of response and getting out there and that forethought of having that equipment mobilized on trailers before the storm even landed that we were able to get out here as quickly as we did and try to alleviate some of that and prevent some of that flooding that could have potentially occurred. Now, that's not to by any way, shape, or form minimize the flooding that did occur. We are still remain focused on the floodwaters that are currently on the ground. In fact, Drew and I are up here in Osceola County right now today, and that's where I'm giving this presentation from, because we're so focused on this area and helping these residents and moving those floodwaters off the landscape, getting it out of the streets, getting it out of their driveways, garages, or living rooms, and getting them back to normal daily life. That's where our attention, our time our focus right now. That's why we're here, still communicating and coordinating with the counties. And we're not going to be going anywhere until the job is done, until these floodwaters have been alleviated and we've gotten them out of the streets and parking lots, as I said. So staff is going to still keep at it. You can imagine it's still going to entail a lot of long nights in the days to come, but we're committed to seeing it through to the end. And with that, I'll just wrap up with not only were the residents that we serve impacted, but we also had district staff that were impacted from the storm directly. So we took up some collections and were able to come up with some supplies and send that over to our family members and team members in the lower West Coast that have been impacted by the storm to help them get through this difficult time. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, John. It's just an incredibly impressive report. I know you've got much more you'll give us next month, but I want you to not spend a lot of time answering our questions now. We'll have them for you next month. And I know the board, I appreciate your indulgence in holding your questions until next month so that Mr. Mitnick and Mr. Bartlett can get back to work up there. And again, I just want to reiterate how thankful we are to our incredible staff for the amazing work they're doing and you're continuing to do. We're going to move now to a discussion agenda. The C-23 Estuary Discharge Diversion Project and Mr. Shirkey.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board
Morning, Alan.
members. So the C-23 Estuary Discharge Diversion Project is basically a new canal, close to 7 miles worth of new canal and a pump station at the north end where that new canal joins with the C-23. And so location-wise, you're looking at kind of the north end of Martin County, just near Allapattah, west of the Martin Highway and I-95 interchange. And so looking at the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the C-23 canal that runs east-west here at the border between Martin and St. Lucie counties. And then in red is the proposed new canal that will take water from the C-23 down to the C-44 reservoir and STA complex. And so the project purpose, you can see here on this map, the C-23 canal that I'm highlighting, it runs east-west and discharges into the St. Lucie estuary just west of Roosevelt Bridge. And so water that often has to be discharged to tide, instead of wasting that water to tide and causing harm to the estuary, the purpose of this project is to take that water, that excess water, and bring it south into the C-44 basin where it can be utilized. And so it's just in times of high flows when the C-23 canal is discharging to tide when that water would be taken south. And it's a prerequisite of the SEP, EAA, reservoir, and STA down south of Lake Okeechobee. And so this is a shot of the S-48 structure. So at the right-hand side of the picture is the upstream freshwater side, and the downstream, or the left side of the picture is the downstream estuary side of the structure. And so you can see at certain times there's a lot of water that's going to the estuary, and we would rather not have that be the case. We would rather take that water, move it to the south where it can either be returned to Lake Okeechobee, used for water supply, or pumped into the C-44 reservoir and STA complex. And so the components of this project, like I mentioned, there's a pump station to draw water from the C-23, 250 CFS pump station. You've got segment 1 of the canal, which is the north leg of the canal, coming south to Martin Highway, where there's a culvert crossing under Martin Highway. And then segment 2 continues bringing the water south to another culvert crossing at Coca-Cola Road, and then eventually a spillway that brings water into the perimeter canal, brings the water into the perimeter canal of the C-44 reservoir. From there, it continues around the reservoir and discharges into the intake canal of the C-44 reservoir, which has a direct gravity connection to C-44 itself. And so this project was put out for bid August 25th. We got bids in September 26th. We got 2 bids in, one from Harry Pepper and one from Kiewit. The bid range was $46.2 million to $58.4, and the engineer's estimate was $62 million. And so with that, have a resolution for the board's consideration. It's to move forward with the lowest bidder, Harry Pepper and Associates, at that $46.2 million number. And as the board is aware, Harry Pepper has done quite a bit of work for the district historically, and so they easily qualified as lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And with that, be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shirkey. We're going to go to public comment on this one, and then we'll go to board questions. Rosie, is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Nyla Pipes. Ms. Pipes, you're recognized to speak.
Sound check.
I can hear you.
We hear you.
Fantastic. Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. I'm just going to say this outright. I think it's incredibly irresponsible to put this particular agenda item, which has a long history of people not supporting it. If you go way back in time, long before STEP, where it was kind of stuck in there in 2 little lines in STEP, and a lot of people didn't even realize it, in such a brief meeting during a time of emergency. I just encourage you guys to maybe table this discussion until the next meeting. And I get it. I know that the EAA reservoir depends upon this particular canal. But some of the problems with this canal that have been raised over time are the fact that this actually has some water quality issues. You know, the water from the C-44 into Lake Okeechobee is already a problem for the lake. And I know we're supposed to solve that with the STA complex, as it was called. But, you know, some important things were just said. The word or, for instance, it can be moved into the canal, it can be moved into the lake, or pumped into the C-44 reservoir STA complex. I don't think that the public has had due opportunity to really look at what this canal does. And we're treating it like it's no big deal because it's just a simple canal. And, you know, why wouldn't we just move that water from St. Lucie County into Martin County at the C-44, back into Lake Okeechobee, and, you know, create the needed water supply that makes the EAA reservoir work? I get it on the surface, but I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think, again, it's really irresponsible to put this on such an abbreviated meeting when we are during the time of emergency. There are wetlands that are being impacted that have not been impacted before. So this is another example with this project, much like we had with WRP, where we are actually destroying some remnant Everglades that have never been impacted in order to do this. I'm not so sure it doesn't violate the Corps' only own water transfer rule as far as being able to move water that is dirtier from one basin to the next without proving, you know, what that water quality looks like. I just think there's so much here, and I appreciate the opportunity to raise those concerns yet again. Last one, of course, being extra water being moved from St. Lucie County. There is no such thing as extra water in St. Lucie County. So I encourage you to table this discussion. I get it. It's also a lot of money, and this is a really brief meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pipes. Mr. Chairman, there are no additional raised hands.
Thanks, Rosie. Ms. Searle-Lippitt, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say for the record that this is the interconnect canal, because that's how it's been discussed for the past years and months. And the C-23 is one of the dirtiest canals that goes into the St. Lucie River. And I personally am grateful that this over time will be ameliorating that process. I myself have worked very hard to be a part of this and the public concerns. And I very much appreciate everybody's work looking for the big picture. I'll make a motion, please, to support this item.
Thanks. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion by the board on Resolution 2022-1001? Hearing none, I'm going to go and call that question. Vice Chair Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes.
Ms. Meads.
Yes.
Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Steinle.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes on that, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will now go to general public comment. Rosie, is there any general public comment?
There is, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start with Caitlin Newcamp, followed by David Mercarian, and then Mark Perry.
Can you all hear me okay?
We hear you, Ms. Newcamp.
Great. Good morning, governing board members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. This is Caitlin Newcamp, Everglades Policy Associate with Audubon, Florida. We would just like to thank you, the district and all of your hardworking staff for their efforts in mitigating Hurricane Ian impacts, carrying out a timely recovery plan and everything in between, while keeping the public informed and prepared during the entire process. We trust this district's expertise in managing water supply during all seasons, and especially your agility during disasters and life-threatening situations. And we commend you for your proactive approach to ensure operations continued to their highest functioning capacity, even during severe weather. This storm and its unfortunate impacts have shown us where we need to further bolster the district's resiliency planning. We know recovery will take time, yet Audubon knows that there are lessons we can learn here to better prepare South Florida for future flooding and severe weather events, especially in light of sea level rise. Audubon observed the district coordinating smoothly with municipal and county governments on storm preparations and recovery, and this exemplifies exactly the type of collaboration needed to carry out successful local resiliency projects. So again, we commend the district on this approach, and we hope you would mimic these methods when planning and building out resiliency efforts across the South Florida region, setting an example for other districts and entities to follow. For example, we know that the Kissimmee chain of lakes is experiencing especially high flood levels from the storm, and while we understand that immediate solutions must be provided to alleviate these impacts, this area represents where a watershed approach to resiliency will be most beneficial. The Upper Kissimmee Valley is flagged as a high-risk region, but the discussion of it in the draft resiliency plan remains to be fleshed out. Audubon is always available to discuss ideas to make our region more resilient to withstand future storms, and we advocate for an approach to make especially the Kissimmee and north of the lake region more self-reliant. We look forward to working with you to improve the water infrastructure of South Florida and to strengthen its capacity to withstand future storms like Ian, further protecting the residents that rely on it. And I thank you for your time and consideration and your heroic efforts during this storm. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. Next, we have Mark Perry, followed by Nyla Pipes, and then David Markarian.
Yes, yes. Good morning, Governing Board. Hope you can hear me okay.
We hear you, Mr. Perry.
I also want to iterate. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you, Mr.
Yeah.
Perry.
Okay. We also want to commend the district for all the great work during this horrific storm that came across the state. And we reach out to everybody who needs help right now, and any way that you can as water managers be able to help those situations in flooded conditions along our rivers and estuaries along the west coast and up in the upper northeast coast. Just a comment on the basically, I know the interconnect canal, which comes from C-23 down to the C-44. That had been in a lot of discussion over the years. It wasn't originally part of the IRL South plan, but just to know that, you know, diverting that water is not necessarily going to help retain it and detain it and treat it. So we need to kind of understand that up in the C-23 basin, it's about 110,000 acre basin and contributes about 330 metric tons of nitrogen each year and about 150,000 metric tons of phosphorus each year. to the St. Lucie. And of course, storing it and treating it better on site up in the basin itself, rather than trying to divert it to other treatment areas like the C44. So the condition is up in the basin itself, there are 63 project culverts through C23, C24 basins that we really need to address upstream of those culverts to work with the farmers and the folks up there in those areas to retain and detain that water on their site in order to treat it there, rather than trying to divert it or put it down into different areas for more centralized treatment before it goes to the estuary. So those are just kind of general going forward. I know this has been in kind of in the works for a while, but just keep that in mind that we still need to kind of work upstream of all the inflows to the canals, C23, C24, and C25 in order to, and C44 in order to store and treat that water upstream of those inflows and not have to work with it downstream in the C44, C23, 24 reservoir and STA. Thank you again for the time to comment. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Nyla Pipes, you're recognized to speak, and then we're going to have David Markarian as a speaker.
Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. First and foremost, I am so sorry for everybody that's been affected by this storm. I guess I can no longer say that y'all have not been tested, that's for sure. But I wanted to go on record and say that we went from facing drought to flooding throughout the entire system practically overnight. I know that you guys were holding a little more water in the northern end of things. I think that that's a really important thing that we have to acknowledge as we go through analyzing what happened here. We have known for a long time, partly because we don't have as much ability to move things in the upper reaches of the system, in the upper chain of lakes, with the passive structures. We have known for a long time that we need that northern storage outside of the natural system. In other words, putting a little more water north of the lake is great, but you can't just do it by putting it in Lake Toho, Lake Kissimmee, etc. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that is part of the problem that we have to solve. And the way you guys have responded is fabulous. However, we need to get to a spot where we have enough infrastructure north of that lake that we don't have to be forward thinking and putting out, temporary pumps in advance and, in a situation where we're basically just praying that we can get the water back off that upper chain of lakes. So we'll talk about this a lot more. I know when we get out of the emergency situation, but I didn't want today's meeting to go by without saying we need northern storage. We need all the options we can get. And clearly we can't just raise the lake stages and the canal stages to get us there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pipes. Next, we have David Markarian, followed by Mike Elfenbein.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the governing board. I'm assuming you can hear me okay.
We hear you, Mr. Markarian.
Thank you so much. So I'm a resident of Palm Beach County, Florida, a native of Florida, Miami, and I understand that this governing board has many miles of responsibility and some critically important things that it tends to. I'm calling your attention to something a little less glaring. It's a problem area under the district's control in the C23 right-of-way in the Palm City area that has resulted in essentially a community in turmoil and what at least one independent voice has described as a ticking time bomb. In short, to set the stage for you on this issue, in 1996, a settlement agreement was reached between a private entity and the district, and that imposed obligations on this private organization. And the two parties, the district and the organization, entered into a settlement agreement. And for many years, since 96, the district has dutifully issued permits that required or ensured that the parties abide by their commitments in this 1996 settlement agreement, primarily obligations imposed upon the community that entered into that settlement agreement with the district. Lately, however, the district has been issuing permits that no longer hold the private entity to account. And essentially, the permits allow variance from the parties' commitments, literally to violate the terms of this 1996 settlement agreement. And, you know, I'm a public citizen. I'm a lawyer. I am deeply proud to be a Floridian, and I have deep respect for this organization and the attributes and benefits it provides to my home area, South Florida. But when something like this occurs, it threatens the integrity of an organization and concerns about arbitrariness, where something is agreed to in 1996, and then walked away from later. I thought deserved your attention. I have consulted with former General Counsel Fumero, who's a consultant for me, and he agrees with our concerns. And essentially, when we make commitments as humans, as organizations, as public servants, all we really should do is keep those commitments. So in conclusion, knowing some of you from childhood and others of you by reputation only, I don't think that this is conduct or decisions you would be proud of or be comfortable with. And I'd like an opportunity to convey more information to you, if I could, about this. I see from attending today's meeting and knowing about your constitution that you tend to many, many important issues. This one is more mundane, obviously, but it's tearing a community apart, and I would love to have your attention to it. And thank you so much for allowing me to appear today before you, most respectfully.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Mike Elfenbein, you're recognized to speak.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Elfenbein, Cypress chapter of the Isaac Walton League of America. I just wanted to call and tell you all thank you very much. Our lives have all been turned upside down the last couple of weeks. I know ours has. Just got Wi-Fi back yesterday at home and power on Friday, and we're starting to rebuild our home. But I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the district board and the district staff for working seamlessly through this storm, to not only stay true to your daily requirements, but also have the flexibility to address something as crazy as what we experienced a couple weeks ago. So for all my critiques, this critique is the most positive, and I'm grateful for your hard work and discipline. So thank you guys very much. Looking forward to the rest of this meeting. Thanks for finding a way to keep these meetings going even through hardship. Really appreciate all of your effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elfenbein. Mr. Chairman, there are no additional raised hands.
Thank you very much, Rosie, and thank you all for your comments. We appreciate them. Our next board meeting is going to be on November 10th, and I appreciate very much. We've not had board discussion, and board members, I appreciate, again, your patience with that, and I feel a little bad for not letting everyone speak, but I really want to let staff get back to work, and if you want to talk to staff, you know you can pick up the phone and do so. And I really look forward to seeing you all next month in person.